Greetings, soul. I want to talk to you just for a moment about sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation. How most time when you're thinking you're awake but you're asleep, so you're thinking you're awake but you're asleep. When you drive a long distance and you traveled that distance, for numerous times in your lifetimes going to work, and you begin to think things in your mind. And I know many of us have had that happen. I've had it happen a lot of times. I could be driving along somewhere, and I know you hear people talk about this conversation, people. I've been driving along someplace, and my mind just goes to another place, and my mind is on the place where I am, right? Where I am. But yet, I'm actually operating the vehicle while I'm driving. So, how am I in two places at once? Sleep deprivation. You're in two worlds at one time, sleeping one and awaking the other. But sometimes simultaneously, it happens to both collide with one another. And you end up getting to your destination. How when you never saw the road? That's my question. How did I ever get here and I never saw the road? And I remember passing my last landmark 20 minutes ago. So I've been a sort of an autopilot, right? Sleep deprivation, sleeping from one world, slipping into another soul, comes with identifying with where you are all the time, right? I'm going to give you a little story about when I was a kid, when I was younger. And God, this win is great. I was younger. I would sleep at night. And if you're in the African American community, you sometimes live in a state of fear, because of what's going on in the environment around you, such as, the violence of gunshots or the neighbors arguing or parties or whatever there is. At some point during the night, there's going to be some kind of chaos or someone's not going to agree with the other party and gunshots are going to go off, right? Well, after so long of hearing that, sleeping becomes sort of, chaotic for, when you're young. Because you're so used to being in two worlds at one time. And you're induced with that fear. And I remember one time waking up at night, could not breathe. And I felt this figure on top of me. I could not breathe, had me suffocating. And I remember what they said in church, or what my grandmother would tell me, or what I heard someone say. I heard the answer and the remedy would be to call on Jesus. And once you call on the name of Jesus, after that entity, or whatever it was, and they called it, back then when I was younger, the word Hank, or the word a demon, a witch riding you, a witch, a physical witch. And it felt like an entity actually felt like riding, taking your breath away from you. But when you called on the name of Jesus, it left. Or you had to call on it several times. But eventually, it would end up leaving. Oh, my sleep paralysis, as I learned, when I got older, because I listened, and everyone else in the African American when we was younger listened to that same horror story that kept us in fear, right? From the trauma. Now, imagine what that ancestral line did to you if you were in the soul. You're always in sleep paralysis in one world, living in another, but yet now your fear is visiting you at a young age. At a young age, and you're thinking it's a monster, or a witch, but it's only a sleep disorder. How long and how powerful did I identify with something that was keeping me underneath my original power soul? That's what I'm saying. And then to identify to where we've been. I'll just utilize the culture with the sleep deprivation, the culture. Because how is it that when one person don't grow or get out of the same 1983 Chevy, or wears the same Adidas from 1975 and has on the same clothes, and he's all right or she's all right living in their life, and then society mocks them for not moving to 2026? Why does he still have that old car that's paid for? Why does he still wear those old clothes? He's not in what we call fashion, or he's not up to date. Now I'm going to show you what sleep deprivation is in this soul, because Michael Jordan produced shoes, Air Jordans, when I was small. And he's been selling millions and millions of these shoes ever since. So, ever since. And people buy them, stand up in line for hours after hours to purchase them, to add it to their collection that sits in rooms. And don't you know, after so long, 15 to 20 years, the bottom of the sole of those Jordans that you stood in line all that time for your collection, the sole are crumbling that you never wear just to show off. Sleep deprivation, so why aren't you saying, why is not society saying that about those people who are continuing to go out and purchase those sneakers? This is what I'm saying, looking at your sleeping cycle of the soul. And even with the model cars, the old model cars, there are certain cars that are worth millions and millions of dollars by society's, thinking and what they think we should pay. So, and there are old vehicles costing more than the new vehicles that are being produced now in way better condition, can do way better things. But because of the value that someone else gave it, so you're sleeping and paying these purchases. I don't see the finality of that unless it's going to come to an end of you and your psyche, your consciousness saying, I gotta wake up. This is the end. I gotta wake up. Because of how we view ourselves when we say we're awoke. So I'm only talking about sleep deprivation. And if this pertains to you, please tell someone else about it. Wake up from what you see in society. Start to make decisions that equates to your eternalness and nothingness first. As the last video, the void, going back to you being you, creator God, you being creator God, we being creator God, no more sleep. So this is Shantavian Payne. I love you in the soul. I thank you in the soul. I appreciate this opportunity to tell you about your now healthy sleep. Now you can sleep healthy at night knowing that you will create the thing that are high consciousness in you. So thank you today. I'll see you soon.